Lunchables looked like freedom in a plastic tray. But the strange truth is that one of the most iconic school lunches in America was not invented because kids needed better food. It was invented because a meat company had a problem. In the 1980s, Oscar Mayer was watching the world change. Parents were busier, families were rushing through mornings, and the old image of mom calmly packing a perfect homemade lunch was starting to feel a little outdated. At the same time, processed meats like bologna were losing some of their magic. Oscar Mayer needed a new way to sell meat, cheese, and crackers to a generation of families that wanted convenience, speed, and something that felt fun. So, a small team led by Bob Drain began looking at the school lunchbox not as a meal, but as a tiny stage. They asked a very simple question. What if lunch did not have to be made by parents at all? What if lunch could be opened, assembled, and controlled by the kid? That idea became Lunchables, and when it arrived in the late 1980s, it hit American childhood like a tiny, edible toy. The first versions were simple: little stacks of crackers, circles of meat, slices of cheese, and sometimes a small treat, all separated inside a plastic tray. To an adult, it looked like an extremely basic cold lunch. To a kid, it looked like power. You were not just eating a sandwich someone else made. You were building your own lunch, choosing your own order, stacking the meat, folding the cheese, making little cracker sandwiches, and deciding exactly how weird your meal was going to be. That was the genius. Lunchables did not just sell food, it sold control. And for kids sitting in a cafeteria, surrounded by trays, rules, bells, teachers, and mystery vegetables, control was delicious. The packaging was just as important as the food. Each little compartment made the lunch feel organized, special, and almost futuristic. It turned cheap, ordinary ingredients into something that looked designed. The tray said, "This is not leftovers. This is not a sad sandwich wrapped in foil. This is your own little meal kit." And that mattered, because American school lunch has always been about more than nutrition. It is also about identity. What you brought to lunch could make you look cool, normal, spoiled, poor, healthy, boring, or weird. A Lunchable had social energy. Kids traded pieces. Kids compared which one they got. Pizza Lunchables felt different from ham and cheese. Nachos felt different from turkey and cheddar. And when dessert and a drink were added, the box started to feel less like lunch and more like a prize. By the 1990s, Lunchables had become a cafeteria status symbol, helped along by advertising that understood children very well. The message was not, "Here is a balanced meal." The message was, "Here is lunch that belongs to you." Commercials leaned into independence, fun, attitude, and the idea that adults were not in charge of every bite. This was the same decade when kids were being marketed snack foods, cereal, toys, cartoons, and fast food with louder colors and bigger personalities than ever before. Lunchables fit perfectly into that world. It was processed food dressed up as personal freedom, and parents bought it because it solved a real problem. It was fast. It was portable. It did not require cooking. It did not require much thought. In a busy morning, that mattered. A parent could grab a box, drop it into a backpack, and feel like lunch had been handled. Was it cheaper than making a sandwich at home? Usually not. Was it fresher? Not really. But it was convenient, and convenience is one of the most powerful ingredients in American food history. That is why Lunchables became so much bigger than meat and crackers. It sat at the crossing point of working parents, kid-focused advertising, school cafeteria culture, processed food technology, and the growing belief that children should have more choices as consumers. In a way, Lunchables was the fast food drive-thru shrunk down into a rectangle and sent to school. Then came the pizza version, which may be the most fascinating of all, because cold mini pizza should not have worked as well as it did. The crust was soft, the sauce was sweet, the cheese was separate, and the whole thing existed somewhere between a snack, a craft project, and a dare. But kids loved it because it let them perform the idea of making pizza. You spread the sauce, you sprinkled the cheese, you assembled something. It did not matter that it was not hot. It did not matter that it barely resembled pizzeria pizza. It was interactive, and interactive food often wins with children. The same thing happened with nachos, tacos, and other versions. Lunchables understood that eating could be play. But the more popular it became, the more criticism it attracted. Nutritionists and parents questioned the sodium, the saturated fat, the sugar in the expanded versions, and the way the product encouraged kids to see packaged, processed food as a treat. Some Lunchables were basically tiny party platters for children, complete with candy and sugary drinks. And that is where the story gets complicated. Because Lunchables was not only a bad food villain, and it was not only a beloved childhood memory, it was both. It represented a real need in American families, and it also represented the food industry's ability to turn that need into a heavily marketed product. It gave kids joy, and it gave parents convenience, but it also taught an entire generation that lunch could come shrink-wrapped, branded, and separated into perfect little plastic squares. Decades later, Lunchables still has a strange emotional power. Adults who grew up with it often remember it with embarrassing affection. They remember wanting one. They remember being jealous of the kid who had one. They remember peeling back the plastic and feeling, for a few minutes, like they had the best lunch in the room. That memory is powerful because childhood food is rarely just about taste. It is about the feeling around the food. Lunchables tasted like salt, cheese, crackers, and processed meat, but emotionally, it tasted like being a kid in the 1990s, sitting at a cafeteria table, trying to look cool while building the tiniest sandwich in the world. And that is the weird history of Lunchables. It started as a business solution for Oscar Mayer, became a symbol of convenience for parents, turned into a status object for kids, and survived as one of the most recognizable pieces of American lunchbox nostalgia. It was never just lunch. It was marketing, freedom, plastic, sodium, childhood, and capitalism, all sealed under one peel-back lid.